Howdy chaps, and welcome back to another fantastic episode. I'm just going to clear up something I've noticed over the years that a couple of YouTubers will say, step 1, jack up your car. That's wrong. Step 1, crack open some liquid inspiration. Alrighty chums, we're back on the EJ and we're now focusing on continuing along. If I sound a bit nasally, it's because I've been sick this week. I've been moving house and it's all been quite full on. Nothing like having a child get sick and then they sneeze right in your face. Love it. Anyway, I've got my new wheel arch section off that quarter panel. I've got my new, well, it's not new, but the front half of that wheel arch, which goes from here down to here. And I've trial fitted that over here and know how much I can and can't cut out, so I'm probably going to keep cutting down here and remove that junk and onward and upward, I guess. It's going to be fairly straightforward. This is a fantastic piece, this one. It's only a little bit of rust at the end, but all of that wheel arch is straight. That one is totally stuffed, and I actually was thinking, I wish I hadn't got rid of all my leftover front guards that were really stuffed, because I realised there's certain shapes in this profile in the dogleg that you could probably have cut out of a front guard that was really bad and reshape into the wheel arch in the dogleg. But I haven't got this one yet, so I can only really repair to, you know, there-ish. But if we can get all that done and finished up, then that'll be an awesome, awesome thing. So I'm just going to have a blowfly fly around me, and I'm going to cut some of that out and catch up. So, you know when you open something up and you're like, oh my god. That's pretty much how my brain just went just then. It seems like this is going to fit fairly well. I had to actually get a fairly decent sized hammer to bash out, oops, I'll actually film what I'm pointing at, bash out the, well, effectively the old wheel arch, because it was all still crushed in. Some bits of more of that stuff, which is a piece of plate sort of tack welded in. I can't quite work out what's going on there. It's like a piece was welded in or pop riveted in, and then it rusted again and somebody brazed over it. I don't really know what's going on there, but it's all going to come out. Just trying to clean up the disaster that there is. And once this piece is in, I'll put a little patch in here and there, and then that bit, effectively the whole wheel arch, I'll repair down here. And I've sliced out, if I'm making no sense, it's because it's not making any sense. But because this is going to be welded behind this, I've sliced that out for now. And I've dropped it. that's going to go in, meet up quite nicely. It's actually going to fit really quite well through there, and it's the right shape too. Also, a side tip: sometimes when you're staring at something really close, just take like 10 steps back, actually stare at it from a distance, because sometimes you can go, oh, and realize you got it all wrong. But no, we're all good. So I'm checking that this profile here is still good from down the side of the car, because it's got a set of ways. And I know this quarter panel was in the wrong spot, because this one fits perfectly on that wheel arch. This will, when this gets welded in, it's sort of jerry rigged at the moment. Yep, there we go. So I'll be able to cut all this bent garbage out, and this actually piece only comes down to about here, so that'll get rid of all that damage, and I'll be able to put that sliver back in there, and then I can actually go, once this is back in, I can actually go and put this in, and then I can stop here, and then once that bit's back in and I work from my back to the front to here, then we can actually focus on the bottom half of the dog leg, and to rectify all this mess. But I didn't want to have, see, this is all steel, it's rusty, but it's holding it together. I didn't want to actually take too much of that apart, because it's still kind of holding the car together. So once this is all welded together, like the new lip is in, this is in, all tacked or welded together, depending on how I feel today, then this will all be secure from here to here, and then we can just do this bit. You might notice I cut pretty close to the edge, because it's actually going to eliminate a lot of warpage, because there's a fold right there, and every time you near a fold, it's actually significantly reduces the chance of warping. So there's about 1,000 different layers in here, and I pulled out a huge hunk of seam sealer in here, and that's probably why it rusts out anyway. So once this piece goes in, we can fix up this little bit, and then put this sliver back in here, and then we can leave that, that'll be in, and then we can put that in, and then once that's all done, as in whoop, we then do this bit. So I'm going to do some cutting, grinding and welding, and I'll catch you up in a second. I'm not going to film everything because it's a bit boring, and it's unnecessary to film, so see you in a second. Alrighty chaps, now some time has passed, yes, but I didn't feel like filming an endless amount of cutting, grinding, welding, etc, etc. You sort of get the gist of it. We basically just did the old cut and butt trick with that half of the wheel arch. I have blended the two together, there-ish. I've still got to fix the dog leg at some point, but that's not the main priority in this video. I'm going to put that sliver back in a second, but then we're going to work out how we're going to join in this massive section of wheel arch, and how I'm going to join it in. I'm pretty sure it's going to be another cut and butt trick, but where I'm going to join it is to be decided. But from there all the way down around there, the whole entire inner wheel arch has been replaced. I mean, it's still rusty there, but it's still been replaced. So, you know, can you imagine if the person who actually did this repair did it properly at day one, and actually welded it properly and sealed it up without putting a sleeve of a jumper in there? You know, there is a chance that I wouldn't actually have to do it again if they'd done it right the first time. But, you know, as one of my favourite sayings goes, the lazy man works twice as hard. And you might ask, how does that work? Because a lazy person generally has to come back and fix it again, which means if you'd done it right the first time, you'd actually have been less work. But here we are, and the whole wheel arch is looking lovely, absolutely spiffy. Actually, in theory, we've actually gone up, around, and actually halfway down the lower rear quarter. So we've done quite a bit, and massive, massive, massive job. But we're getting there. Everything lines up. You can see all the little pressings all match up. So I'm going to weld that little bit in, and then I'm going to catch up when we figure out how on the fruit biscuit we're going to get that on there. Howdy chaps, alrighty. So we have everything ready to rock and roll. Now I did my overlapping and whatnot through here, and then I've actually cut this off so that basically if you overlap around a corner you'll never actually get the piece out because it'll be trapped behind there. So sometimes you actually have to cut that piece off and ready. So I trimmed that to that. I know that this sits in the wheel arch, and I mean obviously it's never going to be quite right here, but a blending is going to be needed because that's a rear spares panel that's not quite crisp enough, as I mentioned in my last video. But if we just shimmy that along to there, you'll see that this fits beautifully snug, absolutely perfect. Lovely here, snug all the way through the wheel arch, perfect here. Now I always said in the other one to do a radius sort of curve, but unfortunately this is just not going to work like that today. So it's going to be, you know, sort of, and you might be wondering why I'm going so far up the panel. It's, well, to shape this curve with filler is really painful. I mean, you can buy blocks, but I'd really like to keep the filler out of the wheel arch. I can keep it up through here. It's actually a lot easier to shape basically because there's a big fat curve that runs through the guts of this quarter panel, and obviously I know that this is going to sink right through here. So what I can do is when I'm welding I can push it out and weld it so it's got a bit of a bulb in it, but it's easier to shape through there than down here. And then obviously we're going to have to work down the dog leg, but today's goal is just to get this wheel arch in and probably finish up the tacks down the bottom there, but just get this all sort of sitting right. I can't believe how much better this... I swear I get interrupted by the air compressor at least once every video. I should learn to turn it off. I mean, I've learned to turn the fan off and the music, but yeah, I need to learn to turn the compressor off when I'm filming. But I can't believe how well this fits, because remember before it was like that almost, but now it's sitting really well. Actually, it was effectively like that, and now it's really snug. It was probably like that because the unit was all crushed in, but now it's all fitting really quite well. So I'm gonna actually glue tab A to part B. So in case you're wondering, this has taken an exceptionally long amount of time to do this and do it carefully. But yes, sitting really quite nicely there. Everything's lining up pretty good. I mean, it is mighty hard to cut a curve with an angle grinder, so it's a bit bigger there than I'd like. This is the area I think I've got to watch the most, because I reckon it's going to sink in the most. So I'm going to take my sweet time with that one. But yes, this has taken all day and I still haven't welded under here yet, but that's the least of my concerns. But the actual the joining of them all in is actually going pretty well. So luckily the car's got a lot of curves. It's curvaceous, you might say. It's curvy like me. Is that a nice way of saying fat? Maybe. So yeah, it's curvy like me. Luckily it's got some big bulbs in the back. I really do love EJ OVHs. No offense to the H lovers out there, but I really do love the EJ and the curves, and it's so sensual. So what I'm going to do is clean up all through here, and I'm just going to intermittently tack all the way around. I did manage to pull out, there it is, the huge chunk that was up there, which was that way round. So you can see where the rag was. What? Yeah, no idea what purpose that served, except to cause a horrendous amount of rust. Anyway, that's really heavy too. That's got a lot of sound in it, right? Oh yeah, and be mindful that when you cut this out, you've got to be able to get it out. And it's not the world's biggest hole to get that out of. But it's from bottom of the tail light lower quarter panel, whole wheel arch, and this section is all going swimmingly. Unfortunately for this type of car, I got very lucky with the fact that I actually had a quarter panel that wasn't too bad. If you do have a really stuffed rear quarter panel, I'm not exactly sure where you'd go about getting a replacement one. Whereas the Falcons, like, you know, that and that, you can get them, they make them. But EJEH ones, as far as I'm aware, I don't know anybody who makes the wheel arch. So in situations like that, you're probably best bet to contact someone like DJ from Automotive Carnage, and there are a lot of bush wrecks up where he is, and he might be persuaded enough to get you a section if needed. I don't know how good those will be, but you know, I can only think of up in the bush as to where you might find some old Holdens lying around. But wreckers these days, if they've got them, they look like they've been on the bottom of the ocean for 40 years. They're just rotten all the way through. So unfortunately, I don't actually know where you'd go about getting a section like that unless it was cut off another car. So anyway, I'm gonna do some more tacking, and then I reckon we might just wrap up the video, because once again the day is fleeting. So I'll catch you up in a second. Alrighty chaps, I've been over I've tacked it all in, ground it all back, gone back over anywhere there was holes. I even went back to where I hadn't quite finished last week's, and you can sort of get the gist of how many pieces have gone into this quarter panel. And I would strongly suggest, if you are a person who doesn't have much patience, don't do this. This is not your kind of repair because you have to be incredibly patient. Now I don't believe it's warped too badly. It obviously has a little bit, but for the most part, I mean, it's a little bit shallow through here, but I think on a sort of, for the most part, it's actually turned out really well. Obviously I haven't been underneath the wheel arch, but I'm just going to run out of time for today. But for a goal of getting the front half of the inner wheel arch in and this huge repair section in, I think it's actually gone spectacularly. I'm going to continue to grind down the welds and then, you know, give it a carrot black before I go home, but the video is going to end here. And then obviously next week we can tackle a little bit further and figure out what we're doing with this mess. But for the most part, it turned out really well. Yes, I did the weld up really high because I'd like to keep filler out of this wheel arch. It would look really good if the filler is sort of only comes down to about here, and then you've just got the original shape there. It'll look like it doesn't have any filler in it, because this is a hard thing to reproduce, the crispness of that. So that's why I sort of stayed away from it, and it's much easier to do a repair in the, like what I've done. But yeah, if you haven't got patience, don't do this. This isn't your game. But I hope you enjoyed it. May not be the best episode, but I think it's turned out fairly well. Not too shabby, I don't think. So catch you around, chaps.